Add this to your resistance training program to build significantly more muscle. Check out this episode where I tell you what this special thing was. Don't wait to start resistance training. Time is running out. Here's the principle. Resistance training should form the foundation of your fitness program. We also want to make sure we're training for aerobic fitness and also some power, speed, and agility training as well. Want to take a moment to thank Orange Theory for making this educational series possible. So let's review. In previous episodes, I gave the evidence that women will lose muscle mass during the menopause transition. The way that we fight this is by resistance training. Now, in the previous episode, I laid out that you can create your own resistance training program, and it's not that complicated. So if you haven't watched that episode yet, go back now, watch it, and then come back and join me in this episode. Now, in that previous episode, I said that the foundational principles for your resistance training program are to lift with relatively heavy weights, take each set that you do to near failure, and then how much you should lift or how often, and the volume of your training are based on your unique situation, your unique schedule, your energy levels, and your capacity to be able to train. Now, I also want to remind you, if you're not in a good place right now, meaning that you're going through menopause and you're experiencing some of the worst side effects, low energy, anxiety, depression, then what I'm going to be talking about is aspirational. It is perfectly fine to focus on getting you into a healthy place where you may wind back the amount of exercise that you're currently doing. Now, we only want to do this for a short period of time, but I want to make sure that you understand it's okay to not constantly be pushing yourself if you're not in a good place currently. And we know that you can build muscle during almost any age. You can build muscle obviously when you're younger, but 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you can build muscle from resistance training. We do know that menopause makes it harder. Now, I'm gonna review a study that was titled Resistance Training Alters Body Composition in Middle-Aged Women Depending on Menopause. And remember, I bring the receipts. The researchers in this study recruited 31 women. Half of them were premenopausal, and their average age was 47 years old. The other half of the women were early postmenopausal women. Their average age was 55 years old, and they had them complete the same 10-week resistance training program. Now, the premenopausal women, they told them, we want you to lift with heavy weights. And you know I love that. That's exactly what I recommend, lifting with relatively heavy weights. They gave the postmenopausal women the same exact program. Now, there was also another subgroup in the postmenopausal women that trained with lighter weights. Now, I'm gonna come back to that group a little bit later. Now, what is a study like this? What is it gonna tell us? Well, since both groups of women conducted the same program, any differences in muscle gain can be attributed to the different hormonal profiles that menopause causes, particularly lower levels of estrogen and progesterone. What the researchers observed in this study was that the premenopausal women were able to gain about 20% more muscle thickness compared to the postmenopausal women. Now, remember earlier, I said that the postmenopausal women had a subgroup that trained with lighter weights. Well, how did they do? Well, they actually gained 20% less muscle than the postmenopausal women lifting with heavier weights. So this is more evidence of the importance of lifting with relatively heavy weights. Now, what about body fat? Well, in this study, the premenopausal women lost a significant amount of body fat. They lost about 3 pounds of body fat, or about 1.5 kilograms. The postmenopausal women, they didn't lose any body fat in this study. So I always like to ask myself, what did I learn from this study? Or what's the lesson we can learn? Premenopausal females are more responsive to building muscle than postmenopausal females. These results don't imply that postmenopausal women can't build muscle. They just suggest that the capacity for gaining muscle is somewhat diminished in the postmenopausal state compared to the premenopausal state. And this actually ties in to a concept known as anabolic resistance. And anabolic resistance is a situation that as we age, our bodies become less sensitive to an anabolic stimulus. Now, this also happens in men as well, and it seems that part of this is due to the hormonal changes that occur. Now, in men, as we age, we produce less testosterone. In women that are aging, they're producing less estrogen. And another aspect of anabolic resistance is nutritional in nature. What we know about this is that protein does not stimulate muscle protein synthesis as well as we age as it did when we were younger. And this is a reminder that protein is a powerful nutrient. So what I like to take away from this study is that we want to build as much muscle as we can during your premenopausal years so that you're more resilient to the changes that will take place during menopause. Now, what else can we do? Research tells us that we could also consider estrogen replacement therapy. Now, as you consider this, know that the decision to consider hormone replacement therapy is between the patient and her evidence-based physician. Another study reported that when women used a transdermal estrogen patch, they gained significantly more muscle mass compared to a placebo patch. Now, I know what you're asking. Did I bring the receipts? I've got the receipts. Now, this study was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study. So this is the highest quality, the highest form of research that we can rely on. Now, as a scientist, as I read research and formulate my opinions on a given topic, that I rely on the most and that have the greatest impact on me and my interpretations and opinions on that topic. In this study, researchers recruited 31 early postmenopausal women. Their average age was 54 years old. Now, at the start of the study, the subjects were not training. They were sedentary and they were not taking any hormone replacement therapy. So they randomized them into two groups. There was an estrogen patch group where the subjects wore an estrogen patch that supplied 0.1 milligrams of estradiol per 24 hours. The other group wore a placebo patch that didn't supply any estradiol. In terms of the program that the researchers had them follow, they lifted 3 days per week and they did whole body workouts. So every workout they were doing exercises for the lower and the upper body. The women were also instructed to maintain their normal dietary habits. Essentially, they weren't dieting. This wasn't a weight loss study. So what are we going to learn from this study? We're going to learn if estrogen therapy impacted the women's ability to build muscle after several weeks of training. And we always want to look at nutrition. We want to make sure that both groups were eating the same amount of calories, eating the same protein. That's exactly what happened in this study. The subjects were not dieting, and both groups were eating the same number of calories over the course of the study, about 1,850 calories per day. Protein intake was only 70 grams per day for both groups. I'll just tell you now, that is not an ideal protein intake. Was estrogen therapy anabolic? Yes. When the researchers measured muscle growth, and they did that across the upper and lower thigh, they found that there was significantly greater muscle hypertrophy in the estrogen patch group compared to the placebo group. Specifically, the estrogen patch group gained 7% more muscle hypertrophy compared to where they started, and the placebo group gained about 4.3% more muscle over the course of the study. Now, we do need to acknowledge that the placebo group did gain muscle, so resistance training by itself was very important and powerful in building muscle. It's just that the estrogen allowed them to build more muscle. Now, we have other studies that reported similar findings. In this randomized placebo-controlled study, when women who were in their early 50s and taking hormone replacement therapy while engaging in resistance training and lower body power drills, they gained significantly more lower body muscle mass compared to women who were given a placebo. One other note, our muscles have two processes that govern their size. We have muscle protein synthesis, which is building up muscle, and we have muscle protein breakdown, which is breaking down muscle. Researchers will look at these in terms of their rates. So if muscle protein synthesis is occurring at the same rate as muscle protein breakdown, then we're not losing or gaining muscle. We're essentially keeping the same muscle that we have. If muscle protein synthesis rates are higher than muscle protein breakdown rates, that's a situation where we're building muscle. The reverse is also true. If muscle protein breakdown is higher than the rates of muscle protein synthesis, well, that's a situation where we would be losing muscle mass. In the earlier episodes, I demonstrated reports that women, for the first time in their lives, started to lose muscle mass during the menopause transition. We have evidence that estrogen therapy, when combined with resistance exercise, exerts an anti-catabolic potential. We know that women are losing muscle mass. That's happening because muscle protein breakdown is higher than muscle protein synthesis. Estrogen, when combined with resistance training, was able to suppress markers of muscle protein breakdown. Specifically, there were genetic muscle regulators that the researchers identified and tracked. The women were on estrogen therapy. They found that these markers of muscle protein breakdown were significantly improved, meaning that they were lowered such that the rates of muscle protein breakdown would not be as high. So what's our take-home message? Resistance training is the most important form of exercise that you can do during this phase of life. The best muscle building effects occur when we combine resistance training with estrogen. And we also have to go back to our foundational principle. Muscle equals health. In that sense, estrogen is an anabolic hormone for postmenopausal women or women who are going through menopause. I would like to thank Hone Health and Orange Theory for making this series possible. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Make sure that you're engaged in all of the episodes. They build on each other. There's a synergistic and comprehensive strategy of which I'm providing these episodes. If you've taken estrogen therapy or any type of hormone therapy, comment below. Let me know how it's worked for you. Has it been helpful? Did it make you feel worse? Help educate me and everybody else who's watching this by sharing your story.